not a single person has been charged with the crime of insurrection. Many people were charged with the actions on that day, but
That fashion sense.
I wouldn't walk around Congress wearing a fuzzy hat, but, But I think that his greatest danger is a jury verdict of conviction. And again, if they rush the trial, he believes today that that election was stolen from him. And that's an important piece, is that people keep talking about, the January 6th insurrection.
Mm-hmm.
I understand why people use that term. I don't understand why lawyers use that term.
How so?
Insurrection is a legal term that has a definition under the United States Code. You cannot sit there and, as a lawyer, and say the January 6th insurrection, when not a single person has been charged with the crime of insurrection. Many people were charged with the actions on that day, but nobody's been charged with insurrection. So, as a lawyer, I throw that term to the side, as being an organized effort to overthrow the government. Obstruction of official proceeding? Yeah, a lot of people did do that. Absolutely. Trespassing, property damage, general mayhem? Absolutely. They did all that. Bad fashion sense? Absolutely. But
Bad fashion sense.
I wouldn't walk around Congress wearing a fuzzy hat, but,
Yeah.
So insurrection is to the side, but even inciting a riot is not something that he's been charged with. He's been charged with the obstruction of the proceeding relating to trying to pressure Mike Pence into not certifying. He's been charged with all these claims of fraud against the United States by falsely claiming that there was fraud in the election to Mike Pence, to various members of Congress, with the intent of doing this, as it relates to the alternate slates of electors, things like that. But they could not, for good reason, they could not establish a connection that he had knowingly incited a violent protest or a riot or an insurrection, because there's no evidence of that. He asked the people to go down there peacefully and patriotically, and so it's very difficult with that video to then go in front of a jury and say he wanted them to go down there and commit murder and mayhem. So that piece of the case is really, excised out.
When is this going to be tried? Is it out yet?
Yeah, right now they're talking about a trial date, I think, of next summer. So still before the election. But, again, given the volume of discovery and everything in this case, it will only get tried on that schedule if everybody just ignores the standard conventions of federal criminal procedure.
Do you think these are going to stick?
I believe that the January 6th charges in D.C. could result in a jury verdict of conviction. I believe that the charges are likely to be overturned on appeal, but I think that his greatest danger is a jury verdict of conviction. And again, if they rush the trial, then he's going to have the conviction, and the appeal is not going to get decided till a year or two later. And so if he has a conviction and the judge sentences him to jail right before the election, then that's going to have an impact. And the fact that that an appellate court overturns a verdict later on, too late.
Yeah. How much time could he be facing with the DC J6 one alone?
And because that indictment came down after I left the team, I never sat down and actually, went through the sentencing guidelines calculations on it. But it would not be a no jail case. And in particular, these judges, I think they would, put him in. One of the things that I'm amazed by is the judges that have been hearing all these January 6th cases. They're witnesses. Some of the judges have even talked about how on the morning of January 6th, I watched the insurrection out my window of the courthouse. And it's true. You look at the court, where the courthouse is, you look out the windows and you can see the Capitol. In any other circumstance, a judge who is that personally involved would ordinarily be removed. And this was a great debate that they had several years ago about, can we actually try 9/11 related Al-Qaeda members in the Southern District of New York? Because the courthouse is so close to the World Trade Center. So I think that if he's tried in D.C., there's a high likelihood, great possibility of conviction. I think that given all of the other sentences that have been handed down for all of the other protesters, I think that the likelihood of him getting 10 plus years is high.
Wow, you think that's high?
Yeah.
It's very likely.
Yeah. I think that the likelihood of that being then overturned by the appellate court is high.
Okay.
And so, some of this stuff may get dealt with in pretrial motions to dismiss, which maybe they'll even allow that to go to the appellate court before trial. That's not something that they usually do, but sometimes it's appropriate.
With the information that you've been presented with when you were on the case, is he guilty?
In my opinion, no. And it all comes down to, did he believe that the claims of fraud were false? I don't think anybody that's ever heard him speak, and certainly nobody that's sat with the man and spoken to him face to face, could ever say he knows that there was no fraud. He believes today that there was fraud in that election. He believes today that that election was stolen from him. And here's the thing. For purposes of this criminal case, his personal belief is more important than whether there was fraud. You can spend a whole trial proving that there was no fraud. But if he believed it at the time, then he's not guilty.
Well, wouldn't the First Amendment protect that?
Not exactly. First Amendment is a little bit more nuanced than that. So the First Amendment does give you the right to, say whatever you want, as long as it's not, as long as it needs, for your free speech to be criminalized, it has to have more than just speech. So, perfect example is, the history behind the Stolen Valor Act.
Hey everybody, I'm Shawn Ryan. Click here to subscribe to the Shawn Ryan Show YouTube channel for the hottest and most compelling interviews that you will not see anywhere else. I've also made a playlist of all the previous SRS episodes so they're easy to find. You can find that right here.